Hello everyone, what's up? Welcome to the GMB channel. Hope you will enjoy our video. Before we begin, hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Here's the news title. Should Keir Starmer send troops to Ukraine as part of Putin? Peace deal? The Prime Minister has said he is ready to deploy British troops to ensure the peace. But do you want to see our soldiers in Ukraine? The Prime Minister confirmed he is ready to deploy a British peacekeeping force in Ukraine if there is a deal to end the war with Russia. Sir Keir Starmer acknowledged British soldiers could be put in harm's way if Putin launches another assault on Ukraine. Sir Keir is meeting up with European leaders for emergency talks in Paris as they attempt to formulate a defense strategy in response to US President Donald Trump's desire to broker a deal between Kyiv and Moscow. The PM's meeting also comes amid concerns in European capitals that the US is poised to step back from its defensive commitments on the continent. The Labour leader called the crisis a once-in-a-generation moment and an existential question for Europe. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, he said the UK was ready to play a leading role in ensuring Ukraine's security, including the commitment of a $3 billion annual spend until 2030. Besides providing military aid, Sir Keir said his position also means being ready and willing to contribute to security guarantees to Ukraine by putting our own troops on the ground if necessary. Sir Keir wrote, "I do not say that lightly. I feel very deeply the responsibility that comes with potentially putting British servicemen and women in harm's way. But any role in helping to guarantee Ukraine's security is helping to guarantee the security of our continent and the security of this country. The end of this war, when it comes, cannot merely become a temporary pause before Putin attacks again." French President Emmanuel Macron called the meeting in Paris, which will see Sir Keir joined by leaders from Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the Netherlands, and Denmark, along with the presidents of the European Council and European Commission, and the Secretary General of NATO. Sir Keir said, "I am heading to Paris today with a very clear message for our European friends. We have got to show we are truly serious about our own defense and bearing our own burden. As it stands, the UK spends 2.5% of GDP on defense, half the 5% Donald Trump has called NATO members to spend, and less than the 3% NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte wants. Civil war erupts in Russian army as commanders refuse Putin's meat grinder orders." Exclusive. The Crimean partisan group Atesh told the Express they were seeing growing signs of a rebellion among Russian commanders as well as a rise in suicides among soldiers. Splits in Russia's army are deepening as commanders increasingly refuse to carry out suicidal attacks, Ukrainian partisans have told the Express. The Russian army has suffered appalling casualties during almost 3 years of brutal fighting in Ukraine. Latest estimates indicate that the Russians have lost somewhere between 600,000 to 850,000 soldiers, a figure that includes both injured and dead. Putin's commanders have shown scant regard for the lives of their soldiers, often hurling them into kamikaze assaults against heavily fortified Ukrainian positions. However, reports are emerging that an increasing number of senior officers are starting to defy orders as they become disillusioned with the tactics of the Russian military command. The Crimean partisan group Atesh told the Express that they were seeing growing signs of rebellion among units operating in the Kherson region. The split deepens, and the closer to the front, the stronger, they said. In the Kherson region, for example, some commanders are really trying to avoid sending troops for an assault because due to the losses they have suffered, they no longer have anyone to staff their units. Of course, they fail to do this, so the soldiers at their level engage in sabotage, destroying their equipment in order to avoid following orders. Throughout the war, there have been constant reports of Russian soldiers killing themselves after being subjected to brutal treatment by their officers. Ukraine claims that some of the highest rates have been recorded in the occupied parts of Luhansk and Donetsk. Part of the Donbass Artem Lysahor, head of Ukraine's Luhansk Regional Military Administration, said that a suicide occurred approximately every 2 days in 2024 in occupied Luhansk. Atesh told the Express that their overall impression was that suicide rates were indeed on the rise. Without clear statistics, it is difficult to talk about this, But according to our feelings, cases of suicide are increasing. This is quite common during combat, especially in target areas where it is related to the morale of the soldiers. They added, Russian commanders often mistreat their subordinates, using constant pressure, threats, and beatings. Many soldiers are in the so-called pits right on the positions, sitting there all day, after which some go crazy. The rebels noted that the Russian army recently dispatched a commission to the 1196th Motorized Rifle Regiment in the Kherson region to investigate a rise in suicides. Mass desertions have plagued the Russian army as soldiers attempt to flee the carnage and slaughter on the front lines. Report by the independent Russian news outlet Vazhny Istory claimed more than 1,000 soldiers went AWOL from the 20th Motorized Rifle Division last spring. Atesh, though, said desertions were becoming increasingly more challenging for Russian troops, given their fear of the horrific reprisals they face if caught. Russians are extremely afraid of their commanders, they explained. For them, escaping from a combat mission is more terrible than direct death while carrying out orders, because barrier troops are waiting for them, or they are taken to basement punishment cells where educational conversations are held by special services and commanders. It is also almost impossible for the Russian soldiers to move away from the frontline area once they are there. A Ukrainian intelligence officer told the Express that the Russians have devised a system of checkpoints that keeps their soldiers penned in their zones. When they get into Ukraine, there is a system of checkpoints all over the occupied territories. A simple soldier cannot even move between the checkpoints, so he's always inside his zone. He can't move out, he said. An officer can cross the checkpoint. A simple soldier has to have written permission, so they get boxed in, and the system is set up to move them out to the front. Should Keir Starmer send troops to Ukraine as part of a Putin peace deal? Introduction. The ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia has escalated into a defining crisis for European security. British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has stated he is prepared to deploy a British peacekeeping force to Ukraine should a peace deal be brokered. This decision raises crucial questions about military strategy, geopolitical stability, and the UK's role in global security. As discussions unfold, it is essential to assess the potential risks and benefits of such a deployment. The rationale behind troop deployment. Sir Keir Starmer has framed this crisis as an existential issue for Europe. His government has committed to a significant military aid package amounting to $3 billion annually until 2030, underscoring the UK's determination to support Ukraine against Russian aggression. Deploying troops as part of a peacekeeping mission could serve multiple strategic purposes. Deterrence against future aggression. A British presence could deter Russia from launching further incursions into Ukraine or other parts of Eastern Europe, ensuring stability in post-war Ukraine. A peacekeeping force would help maintain order and enforce any ceasefire agreement, reaffirming the UK's leadership in NATO and European security. With concerns over the United States' commitment under a potential second Trump presidency, European nations must show solidarity and leadership, protecting British interests. Ensuring a stable Europe is in the UK's economic and security interests. Risks and challenges. While the rationale for troop deployment is compelling, it comes with significant risks. Direct confrontation with Russia. Deploying British forces to Ukraine could place them in direct conflict with Russian military units or proxies. If fighting were to resume, it might draw the UK into a broader war, something neither the British public nor military leaders would want. Public and political opposition. Military interventions are often controversial. There is likely to be strong opposition from both Parliament and the British public, particularly given recent conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Would the British public support sending troops into an active war zone? Financial costs. The UK already spends 2.5% of its GDP on defense, which is below NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte's recommended 3%, and significantly less than the 5% proposed by former US President Donald Trump. A prolonged troop deployment would require increased military spending, potentially at the cost of domestic programs. Effectiveness of peacekeeping forces. The success of a peacekeeping mission would depend on strict enforcement mechanisms and cooperation from all involved parties. Historically, peacekeeping operations have struggled in conflict zones where hostilities persist, such as in Bosnia and Rwanda. The European dimension. The Paris meeting between European leaders highlights a broader concern: the future of NATO and European defense strategy. With uncertainty about America's role in Europe, EU nations must consider whether they can collectively guarantee Ukraine's security. France and Germany have signaled a willingness to contribute, but would they commit ground forces alongside the UK? Alternative strategies. Rather than deploying troops, the UK could consider other forms of support. Enhanced military aid, continued arms shipments, intelligence sharing, and logistical support for Ukraine's forces. Training missions. Expanding the current UK-led training programs for Ukrainian troops, rather than deploying forces directly into Ukraine. Cyber warfare and sanctions. Strengthening cyber defense systems and imposing further economic sanctions on Russia to weaken its war effort. Diplomatic engagement. Playing a leading role in peace negotiations without committing troops to Ukrainian soil. Conclusion. While Keir Starmer's willingness to deploy British troops to Ukraine underscores his commitment to European security, it is a highly complex and risky decision. The potential for escalation, financial burden, and public opposition must be weighed against the strategic benefits. The UK must carefully consider whether direct military involvement is the best course of action, or if alternative support methods could achieve the same goals with fewer risks. Ultimately, the decision should be made with full awareness of its consequences, both for Ukraine and the broader European security landscape. So what do you guys think about this update? Let me know in the comment below. If you like my video, please press like button and subscribe for more. Hope I'll see you in next video.